At the wedding, my boyfriend caught the bridal bouquet thrown by the bride. Then he turned around and gave it to his childhood sweetheart. People who didn't know the situation mistakenly thought they were a couple and began to jeer. Kiss. Kiss. My boyfriend looked at me and said, "It's just a bouquet. Don't think too much." I snatched the microphone from the master of ceremonies and said, "Why don't I wish you two get married on the spot?" As soon as I finished speaking, cheers rang out around me and the atmosphere reached an unprecedented high. Some people were mutual friends of ours and the bride. Knowing my relationship with Sean, they didn't speak rashly but just looked at him with disapproving eyes. Sean's childhood friend pulled his sleeve. I turned my face to the bride and mouthed, "Sorry." I had done something inappropriate at the most important occasion of her life. She came to my side, put her arm around mine, and blinked at me to comfort me. Then she took the microphone from my hand and whispered in my ear, "Stay calm. I'm here." After that, she said in a joking tone, "Everyone got it wrong. Nina and Sean are boyfriend and girlfriend. The one holding the bouquet seems to be Vivian, the little sister who likes Sean." Everyone present was astute and understood the meaning of these words with just a little hint. The looks they gave Sean and Vivian had a different meaning. Holding the bouquet, Vivian turned pale and her standing body swayed as if it could fall at any moment with just a gust of wind. Sean looked at me with complicated eyes and turned to comfort Vivian in a low voice. Since it was a friend's wedding, I didn't want to spoil the atmosphere on the spot anymore and sat quietly eating at the banquet. This little episode at the wedding soon passed. After the wedding banquet ended, I sent a message to Sean, "Let's break up." Perhaps after seeing the message, Sean called back a few minutes later, his tone tinged with anxiety. "Nina, listen to my explanation about the flower." "It's not just about the flower." I interrupted him. "Sean, I went to the corridor before the wedding." The person on the other end seemed to lose his tongue and fell silent. Before the wedding started, the USB flash drive of the master of ceremonies disappeared. In order not to disrupt the schedule, I took the initiative to help find it.I in the corner of the corridor. I found the lost USB flash drive and also saw two acquaintances. My boyfriend Sean and his childhood sweetheart Vivian. Vivian only reached Sean's shoulder. She put her hands on his chest and stood on tiptoe. Sean didn't dodge and let Vivian firmly press her lips against his. He put his arm around her waist and deepened that kiss as if punishing her. Immediately after, Vivian seemed to have a feeling and glanced in my direction. "Brother Sean, I want the bridal bouquet." Sean was dissatisfied with her distraction and pinched her chin and kissed her again. I didn't stay any longer and directly blocked all of Sean's contact information. The game of childhood sweethearts ends here. I have no interest in participating in their love-hate entanglements and boring lives. 1 or 2 drops of water fell on my face. I wiped away the water on my cheek and strode alone into the gradually muddy road. I walked aimlessly from one end of the street to the other, letting the rain continuously wash over me. I didn't know how long I walked until my legs went numb. A little girl ran up to me with an umbrella and thrust the umbrella in her hand into my arms without asking. "Sister, getting caught in the rain will cause a cold. If you catch a cold, someone will be heartbroken." I held the umbrella in my arms absent-mindedly and murmured, "Thank you. But who will be heartbroken? I will be alone from now on." The consequence of getting caught in the rain is a high fever and a cold. I feel weak all over and lie in the quilt not wanting to move until there is a knock on the bedroom door. I open my eyes in a daze. "Who?" I was met with Sean's sharp-featured face. Seeing my listless appearance, he quickly came over and touched my forehead. "You have a very high fever." I moved slowly and didn't break free. I turned my back. I just felt dizzier. When I opened my mouth, my throat was extremely hoarse. "Get out." I was careless. "I'll have someone change the lock later." Probably because I was persistent. After more than 10 minutes, I heard the sound of the door closing. So I grabbed my phone and called the locksmith company. "Yes, change the lock." Click. Sean stood at the door, holding several plastic bags. I didn't know when he returned. "This is my home. It's not a place where anyone can enter freely. Don't force me to call the police." I stared at him coldly and said the first harsh words since we knew each other for so long. He acted as if nothing had happened. He put the bag on the table by my bedside and took out the things inside. As always, he was considerate and careful. "This is cold medicine. This is for reducing fever. There is also a thermometer. When the temperature goes down, just take one kind of medicine. The other bag contains pumpkin and millet porridge." I tried my best to restrain myself from sweeping the things on the table to the ground. A sudden ringtone of a mobile phone broke the stagnant atmosphere. As soon as Sean pressed the answer button, the anxious voice from the receiver blared out, "Sean, Vivian is missing. Come back quickly." I looked at the person in front of me mockingly. He comforted the person on the other end for a few words and hung up the phone. "Nina, let's talk about our matter. When you get better." When Sean's hand touched the doorknob, I spoke as calmly as I had never been before today. "Sean, there is no future. From the moment you crossed the line with someone else." His footsteps froze in place. Nina, will never be anyone's backup. And I will never accept someone who betrays feelings. Sean clearly knows this best, doesn't he? He has participated in my embarrassing past but doesn't have the firmness to accompany me to the end. It is he who betrays our feelings. It is also he who breaks our vows. Before leaving the corridor on the wedding day, I heard Vivian's low sobs. She said, "If my parents hadn't sent me abroad back then, would you still be with her?" After a long silence, Sean's deep voice came through the door and reached my ears. "No." Just 2 words made me run away as if fleeing and also made me completely defeated. After taking the medicine, I fell into a deep sleep. In the dream, it was strange and grotesque. I seemed to fall into one different time hole after another. I stood in front of a door. The panting sounds of strange women and the rough shouts of men rushed into my ears. I covered my lips and took a step back in disbelief. "No. Don't." I quickly turned around the corridor and came to another room. I rushed into the door and threw myself at the window. My hand passed through the air, but the white skirt still. It slipped through my hands. I screamed and covered my head. I watched helplessly as a blood-red flower bloomed on the ground. Stepping into emptiness, I found myself kneeling in the morning hall. The woman in the black and white photo smiled gently. And her husband stood dejectedly aside, as if he had lost his soul. I opened my mouth but found that I couldn't make a sound. In an instant, the sound of gurgling water came from my ears, accompanied by a few flying stones. I touched my temple, and my fingertip was a bright red. Someone came against the light, holding a water hose and spraying it at the children who were throwing stones at me. I couldn't see his face clearly. I only knew that his back was very broad and blocked most of the fierce sun for me. After dealing with my wound, he took off the hat on his head and put it on me, then picked me up on his back. "Nina, let's go home." "Okay." "Zhu." "Wesley." "Brother." A flash of white light passed, and I frowned slightly and opened my eyes slowly. "Wesley." "Wesley?" I wrote this name on a white paper. Perhaps I should retrieve my missing memory. There was a faint turmoil in my heart. It seemed that only by recovering my memory could I fill the void. In the psychological consultation room, Leo, my former psychologist, raised his eyebrows, seemingly very surprised that I came for a consultation. What a rare guest. "When I saw your registration, I thought it was just someone with the same name. Leo is my distant cousin. In the past, when I came to him, I was always full of bitterness. At that time, my mother committed suicide. I couldn't bear the stimulation and suffered from aphasia. I wouldn't let anyone approach me. To keep me away from my father, the source of trouble, and prevent me from being stimulated again, Leo suggested that my father send me to the countryside to recuperate. Later, I vaguely remembered that I was bullied by other children because I couldn't speak. After that, I don't remember anything." "Hey, that so-and-so song didn't follow you?" Leo glanced behind me with a glib tongue. Looking at my face again. "Broken up?" Sometimes I really hope he wouldn't be so perceptive. I lowered my eyelashes. "Yes." Seeing that I looked bad, he lost his rascality and admonished in a deep voice like an old man. "You are still young. If it's over, it's over. The next one will be better." Finally, he muttered in a low voice, "A man like him can only deceive a little girl like you with his glib tongue." I noticed that he always seemed to have an inexplicable hostility towards Sean. It was as if his own cabbage had been taken by an unknown pig. I sat up from the reclining chair. Leo pushed up his glasses frame and probably told me my reaction after hypnosis. He twirled his pen. "What I can do is limited. Your subconscious refuses to remember that memory. If you forcibly awaken your memory, it will backfire. I can only prescribe some medications and use assisted psychological therapy. If you have time, you can go back to the countryside. Maybe a recurrence of the scene can make you slowly remember." He told me that I repeatedly mentioned a person, probably the brother Wesley I mentioned. Maybe finding this person is the key to restoring my memory. When Sean's mother learned about our affairs, she personally came to be a mediator. I know that she is just worried that the cooperation with the Jiang family will be interrupted. Sean's mother took off the white jade bracelet on her wrist and sat down beside me with a smile. "Nina, I have regarded you as one of my own for years. This bracelet was given to me by Sean's grandma. Now, Auntie gives it to you." Saying that, she was about to put it on me. I understood what she meant. After all, Vivian's family background can't compare with the Jiang family. I pretended not to see it and moved my hand away to continue pruning the green plants. The smile on Sean's mother's face gradually froze. "Nina?" I neatly cut off a withered and yellow leaf. In the air, only the sharp scraping sound of the knife remained. "Auntie, I have never liked things used by others." "Why, didn't Sean tell you?" Sean's mother's face immediately flushed red. She tried hard to suppress her anger and took back the bracelet. "Nina, after all, Sean saved you back then." "You, Mom." Her words were interrupted before she finished. Sean stood at the entrance, his face embarrassed. He stepped forward and pulled his mother away. Disapprovingly, he said, "Mom, go back first. This is between us. Don't interfere." After much coaxing, Sean's mother finally left reluctantly. "Nina, don't blame my mom. She didn't mean it. Naturally, I won't be angry with irrelevant people." I turned the tablet screen towards Sean. It was a data sheet. In recent years, the price of materials provided by Songs has increased by nearly twice. According to the department's report, the quality is not as good as before. In comparison, the price and quality of Xuanxi are more advantageous. After listening, Sean didn't hesitate at all. Songs can supply at the previous price. I nodded, turned the screen back and replied to my subordinates. "Nina?" I looked up and found that Sean was still standing there. Impatiently, I asked, "Is there anything else?" Sean stared at me for a while and turned away knowingly. "Sean." I called him. Sean turned around, and there was a glimmer in his eyes. He pursed his dry lips. I lifted my skirt. There was a tattoo of a thorn rose on my fair skin, almost running through my calf. "Sean, we settled things a long time ago. This scar is proof." He knew I had a tattoo but didn't know its origin. I once blocked a runaway car for Sean. At that time, to prevent him from being distracted during the exam, I covered my calf with my skirt and said it was just a scratch, so that he could go to the exam at ease. The black skirt covered the blood well. I can't remember the pain of being scraped by the car on the ground, but I clearly remember the agony of each stitch because anesthesia had no effect on me. During that time, I didn't dare to wear short skirts and hated the ugly scar on my leg. There was a flash of pain in Sean's eyes. In a hoarse voice, he said, "I'm sorry." I shook my head and raised my hand to stop him from coming forward. "I said these things not to gain your sympathy. I just want to tell you that in this relationship, we are equal. I don't owe you anything." Since there was a problem at the factory and delivery couldn't be made in time, and it was time for the scheduled start of work on this side, I held an impromptu meeting with my subordinates to discuss solutions and asked them to solve it as soon as possible. During the meeting, my phone was set to silent. After leaving the conference room, I pressed the screen of my phone to turn it on. Several new messages popped up. The first thing that caught my eye were several photos of the honor roll. Assistant Yuki, smiling emoji, General Manager Jiang, the principal said thank you for donating a library to the school and wants to put your photo on the school's honor roll too. I couldn't help laughing and typed a reply, "No need. I don't want others to know that I used my money power." Just as I was about to switch software, the name on the photo on the list caught my attention. Although it is very blurry, I still catch a few light yellow bold characters. Wesley, the representative of outstanding students of the 13th session. Wesley? I immediately asked my assistant to send a clear photo again. Perhaps due to long-term exposure to wind and sun, the photos on the honor roll have faded slightly. The boy in the photo has flamboyant eyebrows, his school uniform collar is open, and the corners of his mouth are slightly curved as he faces the camera, full of high spirits. The moment I saw the photo clearly, my heart beat very fast. It seemed that something flashed through my mind, but it was too fast to catch. "Yuki, what's wrong, President Jiang?" My phone vibrated. I came to my senses and released my unconsciously clenched white hand. "Yuki, arrange my schedule. Push back the unimportant ones. I want to go to Min Village." Counting the days, I haven't set foot in Min Village for 7 years. I had an accident when I was recuperating in Min Village, resulting in the loss of some memories. Fragmentary scenes often appear in my sleep. Every time I wake up, I feel that my heart is so suppressed that I can't breathe. Leo said that this is because my subconscious is struggling with my own memory, which is why I feel uncomfortable frequently. When the principal heard that I was coming to the school, he personally came to the intersection to pick me up. When I asked about this person named Wesley, the principal shook his head regretfully. I remember this student. He is intelligent and his grades are often ranked first in his grade. He is very excellent. Later, he was admitted to University A. As he spoke, he found an unopened admission letter from under the cabinet. I haven't seen him since not long after the college entrance examination. This letter has also been unclaimed. From the principal's mouth, I learned that Wesley's parents died when he was young and he was brought up by his uncle's family. Later, his uncle's family moved to the city. He stayed in Min Village alone. Usually, he earned living expenses and tuition fees by helping neighbors. I asked the nearby villagers for directions and it took me a long time to find Wesley's original residence. However, it had already collapsed and become a dilapidated house. The surrounding area was overgrown with weeds. On one wall that had not collapsed, there was a circled word demolish. Obviously, no one had lived there for a long time. Some villagers said that he had gone to the city to look for his uncle. Some said that he had gone to work. Others said that maybe he had already started a family. The villager asked me, "Girl, what's your relationship with him? Why are you looking for him?" Even Yuki asked me, "Yes, President Jiang. Why are you looking for this person named Wesley?" "Yes, why? I don't even know myself. I just want to see him inexplicably." I met Sean again at the company's annual meeting. As a supplier, Song's company was also on the invitation list. Vivian was leaning intimately by his side. Perhaps noticing me, Sean pulled out his arm and distanced himself from Vivian. I put down my empty glass. I didn't intend to catch up with them. I turned around and was about to leave. But Vivian called out to me, "Sister Nina, as Sean's female companion, I attend your company's annual meeting. You won't mind, will you?" Sean also looked at me at the same time. His eyes were eager, as if he wanted to catch a trace of lingering affection for him on my face. I didn't respond and just looked at her indifferently. She then smiled and said, "But you have broken up. It seems that you have no reason to be jealous?" Vivian's face changed. "What did you say?" I raised my voice, every word clear, just so that people around could also hear. I said, "Did your mouth drink water from the toilet? So you can be so vulgar." As soon as the words fell, several suppressed chuckles sounded. Vivian angrily took the red wine by her hand. Sean pressed her hand, took away the wine glass, and said in a low voice, "That's enough. Do you think this is what kind of place?" I reminded, "Mr. Song should hold Miss Lu's hand tightly. Don't let her shake her hand and spill wine on me. The price of the skirt I'm wearing is dozens of times that of her clothes." During the annual meeting activity session, some people suggested that stepping on balloons and blowing ping pong balls were too childish and proposed playing truth or dare. I didn't want to participate at first. But Yuki pulled me, "President Jiang, you are the backbone of the company. How can you be missing?" Afraid of these people, I had to sit down. The game rule is that everyone takes turns to spin the wine bottle. The person pointed at by the bottle mouth chooses truth or dare. As for the questions of truth and the contents of dare, they are proposed by the person who spins the bottle. In line with the principle of not hurting harmony, people who don't want to take on dare can also choose to drink 3 glasses as a penalty. I was lucky to avoid it several rounds. In this round, after the bottle spun several times, it was facing me. The person who spun the bottle was Sean. Without hesitation, I chose truth. "How can I get your forgiveness?" He stared at me intently. Everyone visibly held their breath. The gossipy eyes were self-evident. The hall was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Everyone was waiting for my reply. "Many people know about my relationship with Sean, but I haven't had time to say that we broke up. Therefore, today when he and Vivian appear here together, it can't help but make people daydream. Very simple." I blinked. Unless there is water in my brain, the scene was extremely awkward for a moment. Yuki came out to smooth things over. Okay. President Jiang has answered. Spin the bottle. Who is next?" The game continued. This time the bottle turned to Vivian's position. The person who spun the bottle asked, "Pick someone here and talk about the thing he did that impressed you the most." It was a perfectly normal question. Vivian looked at Sean by her side with a smile, with pink bubbles in her eyes. "I choose Brother Sean." Not knowing what she was thinking of, she said affectionately while recalling, 7 years ago, before I went abroad. At that time, we were having a fight. Brother Sean raced with a fever of 39 degrees just to win first place and get a medal to coax me. It's a pity that he made a driving mistake and accidentally overturned and injured his leg. Everyone gasped after hearing this. After I heard it, the wine glass in my hand rolled to the ground. A huge wave surged in my heart. I looked at her incredulously. Sean was still in a daze because of what I had just said. When he reacted, his face changed drastically. He clenched Vivian's forearm and took her away from her seat. Sorry everyone. She's had too much to drink. Let her go, Sean. I stood up from the chair. Let her finish speaking before leaving. Vivian forcefully broke free from Sean's hand and pointed at me. What are you? You are just a substitute for me. Sean is willing to race for me and resist his family for me. Back then, in order to separate me and him, the Song family climbed up to the Jiang family and fabricated lies, saying that his injury was to block a car for you. You are just lucky. That's why everyone revolves around you. Slap. That's enough. Vivian covered her face and looked at the person in front of her incredulously, murmuring, You actually hit me for her? Vivian. Sean's face was cold and hard. He said resolutely, When will you stop making trouble? I have already made it clear to you. We are over. Vivian choked with sobs. But you kissed me that day. Ask yourself, do you really have no feelings for me at all? As she spoke, she cried aggrievedly. Sean's face was gloomy. If you hadn't threatened me and said you would tell this matter, I would never have touched you. I looked at them coldly. A wave of nausea rose in my stomach. Good, really good. I took the bag on the back of the chair. I didn't want to see these two people for even a second. A flicker of panic flashed in Sean's eyes. He stepped forward to stop me, his face a mixture of remorse and guilt. Nina, I can explain this matter. I also have my difficulties. You can't just sentence me to death like this. Seeing that I was unmoved, he took an empty wine bottle on the table and smashed it against the wall. Nina, for you, what's the big deal if I lose this leg? As he spoke, he actually picked up the fragments on the ground and stabbed them into his knee. Soon, a patch of bright red blood spread on his light-colored suit pants. Everyone was frightened by his actions. They wanted to stop him, but he waved them away with the fragments. Don't come over. I slowly pried off his hand that was clutching my hem. I ignored the blood on his hand and said in an unwavering tone, Who are you trying to impress with your so-called deep affection? After trampling on my heart, you still expect it to pity you? Even if you die in front of me, I won't shed a single tear. I shook my head and pointed at my heart. You can try. Let's see if your life is tougher or my heart is tougher. After saying that, I didn't look back anymore and left with big steps. 7 years ago, I woke up in the hospital and lost my memory of everything that happened in Min Village. I will never forget the feeling of near-death suffocation in my heart when I just woke up. I didn't know where to go. I rushed out of the ward barefoot and ran out until the soles of my feet were pierced by sharp stones and blood flowed all over the ground. I only knew that I had to find someone, but I didn't know who I was looking for. I looked at the traffic on the road in confusion. For the first time, I felt a sense of powerlessness and squatted on the ground and cried loudly. Later, everyone told me that a boy named Sean had saved me. For this reason, his right leg was comminuted fracture and he had multiple contusions all over his body. When I first saw him, he had a very bad temper. I attributed it to being injured because of saving me. The injury was severe and the pain was unbearable. Occasionally being a little difficult to deal with was also tolerable. I brought meals to Sean without fail every day. At the moment when the door was pushed open, a half-finger-thick dictionary flew towards me. I dodged to the side. The dictionary hit the floor and made a dull sound. Who asked you to come? The person on the bed had a plaster cast on his right leg and it was propped up high. His questioning voice was still full of vigor. I picked up the things and put them in order and comforted him. The doctor said you just have a fracture. Not an amputation, you will get better if you rest well. That he seemed to be amused by me. You are really good at comforting people. I moved my nose and smelled the pungent smell in the air. I lifted Sean's quilt in one go. Sure enough, there were spicy crayfish, spicy chicken, and kebabs hidden inside. Hey, do you have a dog's nose? He lay on his stomach and reached out with his long arm to firmly protect those stolen goods. It was extremely easy to snatch things from a patient. I took the things from his arms and confiscated them all. You still need to avoid certain foods now. You can't eat these. I poured out the chicken congee from the thermos and put it on the small table in front of him. I turned my back and was about to drink some water. A sticky heat on my back was accompanied by a sharp burning pain. Sean held an empty bowl. There was unconcealable malice on his face. Now I can't eat it. As he spoke, he sneered and threw the bowl at my feet and closed his eyes and lay down on the bed. Leave now. I'm tired. I unscrewed the lid and poured the remaining porridge on his head. The person on the bed couldn't avoid it and let out a wail. He suddenly pushed me away. Are you crazy? My lower back hit the corner of the cabinet. It was very painful, but it was very satisfying. I couldn't stand him anymore. If he hadn't saved me, I would have pushed his stinky face into the toilet long ago. After that, Sean didn't dare to cause trouble for no reason anymore. Even his attitude towards me improved a lot. After getting along, I found that he wasn't a bad person. He was just spoiled by his family. Later, there would always be a figure on crutches running all over the streets and alleys and bringing back my favorite snacks just to please me. On his birthday, while taking advantage of the moment when the lights were turned off and the candles were blown out, he quietly held my hand. You haven't repaid my life-saving grace yet. I looked back at him, the light in his eyes flickered. My reflection was in his eyes. How can I repay it? I asked. His palm was sweating. He inserted his fingers between mine and interlocked our fingers. In a hoarse voice he said, repay me with your body. At that moment, my heart was beating very fast. Looking back now, there is more confusion. After the candles were blown out, everyone asked him one after another what wish he had made. There was joy in his eyebrows and eyes. He raised the hand holding mine. I won't tell. My wish has come true. And now I know that the so-called life-saving grace is just a lie woven with ulterior motives. No wonder when I heard that the person who saved me had a broken leg, my heart was extremely uncomfortable. But when facing Sean, I always felt that something was missing. It turns out that it wasn't him who saved me. 9 Early the next morning, Vivian was waiting downstairs at the company to block me. There were faint dark circles under her eyes. She didn't have the arrogant look of yesterday. When she saw me, she rushed forward to stop me. Nina, let's talk. My time is very precious. I don't chat idly. I didn't stop walking and pressed the up elevator button as I passed her. Sean has lost so much blood. He won't let anyone approach him. His wound hasn't been treated until now. He also has a high fever and has been muttering your name all the time. She bit her lower lip tightly. Her voice trembled. Can you go and see him? If this continues, he won't be able to bear it. I said sarcastically, what affectionate drama are you acting in front of me? Without me, can't you prove your passionate love? Because I was facing away from Vivian, I didn't see the flash of resentment in her eyes. Making our lives a mess. Why are you still standing here? Fine. Yuki exclaimed, President Jiang, be careful. A force came from behind me. I lost my balance and fell forward. My forehead suddenly hit the corner of the wall. After the sharp pain, there was a buzzing in my ears and blood filled my vision. Before losing consciousness, I heard the chaotic footsteps and Yuki's panicked voice. Call an ambulance quickly. Catch her. Don't let her run away. My head hurt very much. It hurt so much that it felt like it was going to explode. As if falling from the clouds, sporadic fragments of memories kept crashing into my mind. The face of the person who drove away the children who bullied me with a water pipe gradually coincided with the face on the honor roll photo. I remembered. I had never been in a car accident at all. From beginning to end, only he has saved me. In the eyes of outsiders, my dad sent me to the countryside to recuperate helplessly that year. In fact, he did it to please his new lover. I was sent by him to be taken care of by a family surnamed Zhao in Min village. The Zhao family is a distant relative of my grandfather's generation. On the surface, Aunt Zhao was very loving towards me. Secretly, she took the money from my dad's new lover and didn't give me enough food. She often made me do chores and beat and scolded me. Her husband was an alcoholic. As long as he got drunk, he would hit her. She couldn't resist, so she took out her anger on me. It seemed that this could give her a sense of accomplishment. I didn't have as much strength as her. The result of resistance was being locked in a small dark room and not given water or food. Only when she went out could I secretly go outside to get some fresh air. That day, I followed the fragrance and walked into a small courtyard. A boy is sitting on the stone steps, struggling with the braised pork in his bowl. My stomach is growling with hunger. Unconsciously, I have squatted in front of him and stared at the meat in his bowl without taking my eyes off for a moment. I haven't eaten meat for a long time. Later, I came to know that he has a very pleasant name, Wesley. I snatched his bowl, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he reheated the meal and gave it to me to eat. He applied medicine to my hand and helped me teach Aunt Zhao a lesson. After that, my days got much better. I also increasingly loved to follow behind him because every time he would prepare my favorite braised pork and patiently guide me to speak. He said that when he was admitted to college, he would take me away from Min village and would never let anyone bully me again. For the first time, I felt that the heart in my chest could beat so fast and be so hot. I accidentally discovered Aunt Zhao's secret. Uncle Zhao came back drunk and smashed everything in the house. Aunt Zhao also suffered. After venting everything, he left staggering with a wine bottle in his hand. I hid in a haystack not far away and narrowly escaped. Not long after Uncle Zhao left, a strange man entered the house. Soon, there came an embarrassing sound from the room, mixed with Aunt Zhao's moans that seemed both joyful and painful. My blood instantly froze. Wanting to escape, but my hands and feet didn't listen to me. My mother jumped from a tall building, and the image of her white dress blooming with blood constantly played in my mind. I covered my head, and a hoarse sound like drowning came from my throat. When I came to my senses, what I saw was Aunt Zhao looking down at me with a deep gaze. A shudder ran through my heart. She patted my face and smiled at me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Nina, what did you see just now?" My back felt cold, and I shook my head desperately. "No, nothing." Aunt Zhao started to be nice to me as if nothing had happened that day. A few days later, on an ordinary afternoon, it was a nightmare that I would never want to recall in my life. The day before, I gave Wesley a CD and made an appointment to meet the next day. When I was about to go out, Aunt Zhao angrily kicked open the door and slapped my face so hard that it turned to one side. "Damn girl, did you tell Zhao who? I'll skin you alive today." She didn't listen to my explanation and kicked my stomach several times hard. I didn't dodge and fell to the ground. A fishy sweetness rose in my throat. The man behind Aunt Zhao stopped her. "Don't hit anymore." "How can we explain if she dies?" The man licked his lips and looked at me without restraint. "You go out first. I'll teach her a lesson for you." Aunt Zhao understood his meaning, looked around a few times, backed out and closed the door. "Hurry up. Don't let anyone find out." The man approached me and took off his pants. I fled to the door and beat on it with all my strength. During the violent pulling of clothes, they ripped with a sound. My skin was exposed in the air. I could only helplessly cry and kick the person pressing on me. At that moment, I thought of death. Boom! The door collapsed with a loud noise, and light spilled into the room. Wesley rushed in, threw the person on me aside, took off his clothes and covered my body. The man cursed, "Damn it, ruining my good thing." Wesley's eyes were bloodshot, and his fists rained down on the man's face. The man was thin and small, and soon was suppressed by Wesley. In a place we didn't notice, Aunt Zhao raised a hoe and struck at Wesley. Wesley was hit on the head and his head fell back weakly. His hands and feet began to twitch uncontrollably. His lips moved. When he fell, he only had time to look in my direction. There was a roaring sound in my head, and the world spun in an instant. I knelt and crawled to his side with trembling hands and held his face. "Wesley. Don't scare me." He lay there motionless as if asleep. I crawled to Aunt Zhao's feet again, who was stunned, grabbed her trouser leg. "Aunt Zhao, please help call an ambulance. I can give you as much money as you want. Please." Aunt Zhao bypassed me and checked Wesley's breath. She was so scared that she took 2 steps back. "There's no breath." I collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. My 10 fingers dug into my hair and I shook my head and murmured, "Impossible, impossible." Aunt Zhao and the man exchanged glances and pressed me down and tied my hands behind my back. I wanted to call his name, but found that my throat was hoarse and the smell of blood kept spreading in my mouth. I could only watch helplessly as the fire engulfed him. A big fire extinguished all sins. After doing everything, the man said to Aunt Zhao, to avoid any mishaps, find medicine to make her mute, break her limbs, and then say that she accidentally fell off a cliff. Otherwise, if the Jiang family remembers her, it will be troublesome. I lay on the ground, with blood and tears mixed in my mouth. I recalled what Wesley wanted to say to me before he fell. He said, "Survive.so." I escaped with all my strength when they didn't notice. I ran onto the road and rushed out when I saw a car. Aunt Zhao and that man chased after me. They were run over by a truck that couldn't dodge in time and didn't even leave a whole body. I cried and then laughed wildly. Slowly closing my eyes, I fell in the middle of the road. When I woke up, I was like a dying fish, constantly breathing in fresh air. Leo was by the bedside. When he saw me wake up, he asked with concern, "How are you? Is there anything uncomfortable?" "Leo." I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. Tears seeped out from the corners of my eyes. He didn't go to find his uncle, nor did he go to work or start a family. He has always been in Min Village. How could I have forgotten? My beloved teenager will always stay in Min Village. I finally understood why every time Sean wanted to kiss me, I would subconsciously dodge. Because the person living in my heart has never been him. Leo still had work to do and left soon. I raised my hand to take the glass on the table. My hand slipped and the glass fell from my hand. The glass smashed on the ground and broke into countless pieces. I reached out to pick them up, and a sharp pain came from my fingertip. I stared blankly at the blood bead flowing from my fingertip. In a flash, the transparent fragments became white porcelain pieces. Nina, are you okay? My hand was carefully lifted up by someone. You're bleeding. Let me deal with it for you. I looked up and saw the person in front of me. I couldn't help holding my breath, fearing it was a dream. What's wrong? Does it hurt very much? He blew gently on my finger with concern, his face full of care. Wesley. I softly uttered his name, and tears fell down. He looked at me helplessly and clumsily wiped away the tears on my cheek with his fingertip. Did Aunt Zhao bully you again? I shook my head and threw myself into his arms. Listening to his steady heartbeat, my heart seemed to find a place to belong. I calmed down and looked around. This is Wesley's yard. Despite the injury on my hand, I grasped his arm tightly. Wesley, what's the date today? Wesley bent down and held my head in his hands, looking at me suspiciously from side to side. Did you hit your head? But there seems to be no wound. I tightened my grip on his sleeve, so anxious that tears were about to well up again. I'm serious. Impertinent, calling me by my name directly. He tapped my head. July 15, 2016. I was greatly shocked in my heart, but I didn't dare to show it on my face. July 15th. The day when Wesley and I agreed to meet the next day. I closed my eyes and made up my mind that I must find a way to prevent him from coming to see me tomorrow. After stopping the bleeding, Wesley put a band-aid on me. Seeing me sitting on the chair in a daze, he said, "What's wrong? Didn't you say you had something for me today?" I forced a stiff smile. I forgot. He raised an eyebrow and said helplessly, "What kind of memory do you have?" I was thinking about what could hold him back tomorrow. I remembered that this year, the daughter of the village chief got a very high score. Tomorrow is the day when the village chief holds a flowing banquet for his daughter and invites the villagers of Min village to the banquet. It takes at least 20 minutes to get from the banquet place to the Zhao family. That's enough. Wesley was taking a broom and preparing to clean up the bowl I had broken just now. I stepped forward and pulled at the corner of his clothes, saying in a deliberately relaxed tone, "I want to go to the Wang family's banquet tomorrow. Will you accompany me?" Wesley would never refuse my request. He nodded, his eyes curved. "Okay, little glutton." I pretended to sigh again. "What's wrong?" I propped my chin on my hand. "I forgot that I still have to pull out corn tomorrow. But it's okay. You go first. I can still catch up. I'll help you. It'll be faster with one more person," he said as he poured the fragments in the dustpan into the trash can. I shook my head. "No, don't you still have work to do tomorrow? I'll be very quick. Didn't we agree that as soon as we get the money, you'll buy me candies?" He laughed and pinched my face. "In vain, I'm so good to you on weekdays. You just keep thinking about these candies." Seeing that there was no doubt on his face, I breathed a sigh of relief. That night, I didn't return to the Zhao family. Instead, after the lights in Wesley's house were turned off, I quietly pushed the door and went in. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow. I just wanted to stay with him a little longer. The person on the bed turned over, his face facing in my direction. His eyes were tightly closed, and his curly eyelashes trembled slightly with his shallow breathing. I sat by the bed for a long time. Finally, I couldn't resist lowering my head and planting a light kiss on his forehead like a dragonfly touching water. I raised my hand and traced his eyebrows and eyes in the air, trying to firmly remember his appearance in my mind. How I wished time could freeze at this moment. "Thief!" He suddenly opened his eyes and teasingly caught my wrist. "Here to steal candies?" I lowered my eyes and let my wrist be held in his hand. Fortunately, he didn't notice. After a silence, I heard him say, "You are not the Nina I know. She would never look at me with such a compassionate look." I broke free from his hand and was in a great turmoil. Pretending to be calm, I said, "You're hurting me." Wesley immediately panicked and turned on the light to look at my wrist. "I was just joking. Is your hand okay? You didn't lock the door." "I came in because I was worried that someone might steal something." I put my hand behind my back and looked away. After calming down, I realized that my words were full of flaws, but he believed me. Wesley accompanied me all the way back to the Zhao family. I didn't notice that his earlobes were bright red. This night was to be a sleepless night for both of us. I didn't enter the house. After Wesley left, I spent the night outside casually. Just like that evening 7 years ago, Aunt Zhao came home angrily with a wound on her face. Not finding me, her anger grew even stronger. The man followed behind her, soothing her emotions. Aaron, who lived not far away, had just taken a bath and was walking past the Zhao family while holding a dirty clothes basket. Aaron fell from a height when she was young and damaged her head. Her intelligence remained at the level of a 7-year-old. The man stroked his chin and stared at Aaron lecherously, then he said something to Aunt Zhao. Aunt Zhao pinched him but reluctantly walked towards Aaron, then Aaron followed her into the house. I hid not far away. My heart was filled with alarm. In a hurry, I dialed 110. The address is, please send the police quickly. Time passed by minute, the sweat accumulating on my forehead grew more and more and my heart was raised high. No, the shrill cry from inside the house reached my ears. I quietly approached the window and shouted loudly so that the people inside could also hear. What? Uncle Zhao got drunk and injured someone? The police are coming? After shouting, I hid aside. Sure enough, the man rushed out in a panic while pulling up his pants. I took the opportunity to slip into the house, helped up Aaron who was disheveled and fainted and prepared to run out. But I forgot that there was still one person inside. Aunt Zhao stood behind me with a gloomy face. I touched behind my ear. My hand was full of blood. In an instant, my vision became hazy and the hand supporting Aaron went limp. I shook my head and tried to stand firm. My body swayed and knocked over the table in front of me, blocking the stick that Aunt Zhao was about to swing down. Drip, drip, the blood dripping on the tiles made my pupils suddenly contract. It's not my blood. I looked up stiffly. A corpse was hanging from the beam. Uncle Zhao's bluish-purple face came into view. Aunt Zhao giggled. Since you already know my secret, don't expect to leave here alive. My whole body was covered with goosebumps. Crazy people. They are all crazy. I wanted to escape but was tripped by Aunt Zhao and fell to the ground. My knees ached unbearably. At the moment the door was locked, I resignedly shed tears. It's all my fault. I changed the course of events and let innocent people get hurt. Aunt Zhao's voice came from outside. Nina, don't blame your aunt when you go underground. Aunt will burn more paper money for you. Then the footsteps gradually faded away. Dense black smoke rushed in from outside and soon surrounded the house. The air inside the house became thinner and thinner. I endured the pain and got up. I picked up a chair and hit the door. Cough, cough. Erin woke up. Seeing this, she cried nonstop. Sister Nina, I feel so uncomfortable. I hugged her tightly. Don't be afraid, sister will save you. There was a banging on the door from outside. Nina. Are you inside? The fire grew bigger and bigger. I didn't have time to think about why he was here. I immediately responded, Wesley, Aaron and I are locked in here. Don't panic, stay away. I'll break down the door. After hearing this, I pulled Aaron and backed away. After being hit many times, the door finally couldn't hold on and cracked open. Her intelligence remained at the level of a 7-year-old. The man stroked his chin and stared at Aaron lecherously, then he said something to Aunt Zhao. Aunt Zhao pinched him but reluctantly walked towards Aaron, then Aaron followed her into the house. I hid not far away. My heart was filled with alarm. In a hurry, I dialed 110. The address is, please send the police quickly. Time passed by minute, the sweat accumulating on my forehead grew more and more and my heart was raised high. No, the shrill cry from inside the house reached my ears. I quietly approached the window and shouted loudly so that the people inside could also hear. What? Uncle Zhao got drunk and injured someone? The police are coming? After shouting, I hid aside. Sure enough, the man rushed out in a panic while pulling up his pants. I took the opportunity to slip into the house, helped up Aaron who was disheveled and fainted and prepared to run out. But I forgot that there was still one person inside. Aunt Zhao stood behind me with a gloomy face. I touched behind my ear. My hand was full of blood. In an instant, my vision became hazy and the hand supporting Aaron went limp. I shook my head and tried to stand firm. My body swayed and knocked over the table in front of me, blocking the stick that Aunt Zhao was about to swing down. 11. Drip, drip, the blood dripping on the tiles made my pupils suddenly contract. It's not my blood. I looked up stiffly. A corpse was hanging from the beam. Uncle Zhao's bluish-purple face came into view. Aunt Zhao giggled. Since you already know my secret, don't expect to leave here alive. My whole body was covered with goosebumps. Crazy people. They are all crazy. I wanted to escape but was tripped by Aunt Zhao and fell to the ground. My knees ached unbearably. At the moment the door was locked, I resignedly shed tears. It's all my fault. I changed the course of events and let innocent people get hurt. Aunt Zhao's voice came from outside. Nina, don't blame your aunt when you go underground. Aunt will burn more paper money for you. Then the footsteps gradually faded away. Dense black smoke rushed in from outside and soon surrounded the house. The air inside the house became thinner and thinner. I endured the pain and got up. I picked up a chair and hit the door. Cough, cough. Erin woke up seeing this. She cried nonstop. Sister Nina, I feel so uncomfortable. I hugged her tightly. Don't be afraid, sister will save you. There was a banging on the door from outside. Nina. Are you inside? The fire grew bigger and bigger. I didn't have time to think about why he was here. I immediately responded, Wesley, Erin and I are locked in here. Don't panic, stay away. I'll break down the door. After hearing this, I pulled Erin and backed away. After being hit many times, the door finally couldn't hold on and cracked open. At this time, the beam on the top of our heads broke and fell to the ground, separating us from Wesley. The fire burned to half a person's height. Wesley rushed in regardless and pulled my hand to help Erin and run out. Be careful. Someone pushed me hard from behind Erin and I to the ground. I looked back and saw the house collapse with a loud noise. The fire tongue swallowed Wesley little by little. My eyes were about to split as I rushed back. No, the police who came later stopped me. A flash of white light flashed before my eyes. Nina, let go quickly. I looked at everything in front of me in a daze. I don't know when there were several wounds on my wrist and blood gushed out. I held the glass fragments and mechanically cut myself as if I couldn't feel the pain. Sean knelt beside me and took away the fragments in my hand. I spread out my palm. The wound on my thumb was still bleeding and a faint scar appeared on the belly of my originally unscathed index finger. It turns out that it's not a dream. Why wasn't it me who died? After hurting me, Vivian was taken away by the police on the spot. Since I only had a minor injury of concussion, she was detained for 10 days. Later, someone on the internet exposed the video of her bullying classmates and causing disability in high school. I don't know why this matter was quietly settled back then. Now it has been exposed by someone with a heart. There are continuous complaints about her on the internet. On the day she came out of the detention center, she was chased and had rotten eggs thrown at her all the way and was beaten until her head was bleeding, but it didn't take long before she was summoned by the police again because of the bullying incident. This was all told to me by Yuki when she came to visit me. I don't sympathize with her experience. If a person is rotten from the root, then collapse is only a matter of time. And since the doctor judged that I had suicidal thoughts that day, the window of the room where I was located was sealed and all sharp objects in the room disappeared. Even the cup for drinking water was replaced with a stainless steel cup. Sean stayed by my bedside all day. I didn't have the strength to toss anymore, so I simply regarded him as air. I lost weight visibly. I vomited whatever I ate and began to have hallucinations. In the middle of the night, I always woke up from the bed muttering Wesley's name. On this day, Sean still brought the meal to me on time. I didn't throw the lunchbox on him anymore and ate it bite by bite. Sean seemed to be cheered up by my actions and tentatively wiped the traces on my lips. I stared at the wall in a daze. Seeing that I didn't resist, he put his hand on mine. When you get better, I'll take you out for a stroll, okay? I nodded slowly. After a long time, I looked up at him. I want to eat chestnut pastries from Shinji. Okay, I'll buy it later. I stubbornly said. I want to eat it now. Sean had to agree. I clenched the key in the palm of my hand. I'll open the door for you when you come back. He left with peace of mind. I stood by the window and heard the sound of driving away. I went to the bathroom and vomited everything in my stomach. I repeatedly washed the places he had touched until the back of my hand was red. I stood on the rooftop and only felt that everything was so small. Facing fate, I couldn't resist. I closed my eyes and spread my hands in the wind. There was a thought in my heart, telling me to jump down. Jumping down can end everything. Nina, cheer up. The person who came later choked slightly. Seeing me drop my hand, Luo Fei continued, didn't you tell me that someone tried their best to save you back? What would the person who desperately saved you think if you do this? Suddenly, Wesley's face flashed in my mind. He said, live on. Yes, he asked me to live. Taking advantage of my stunned moment, Luo Fei suddenly pulled me down from the rooftop. The medical staff firmly surrounded me. I grabbed Luo Fei's sleeve. Luo Fei, I will be obedient. Don't let them lock me up. After that, I took my medicine obediently and accepted the psychological treatment formulated by Luo Fei for me. Sean never came again. He had a car accident on the way to buy snacks for me. I heard that he still hasn't woken up. Maybe he will never wake up again. After verification by the police, his car was tampered with by the company's executives who had conflicts of interest with him. I gradually took over the shares in my father's hands and kicked him out of the board of directors. With his habit of spending lavishly, he soon couldn't hold on and came to me with his lover and illegitimate child. I laughed. Want money? Okay. Go and kowtow 99 times in front of my mother's grave. If my mother forgives you, I'll give it to you. After hearing this, he was so angry that he jumped up and cursed and rushed up to beat me. I lit the firecrackers at hand and threw them out. The few of them jumped up and down like toads in a hot pot. In the end, they could only cover the torn holes in their clothes and run away in dismay. I looked up at the sky and took in the entire sunset. Wesley, did you see it? Every day when you are not here, I have been fighting monsters and upgrading well. When will you enter my dream again? Even once. Wesley's one. I had heard earlier that a young lady had come to the city. She was very beautiful, but she couldn't speak because she had been stimulated. I looked at the girl squatting in front of me, licked her lips, and stared straight at the braised pork in my bowl, feeling worried. Is she that Nina? She doesn't look like it. Her face is so thin, as if she has never had a full meal. I got up and went back to the kitchen to get a bowl of rice, and added meat and vegetables. Do you want to eat some? The leftover rice I had just eaten disappeared along with the bowl, leaving only a fleeing figure. Then she tripped over something and fell. I asked, this person stupid? I chased after her to scold her, but saw her pick up the braised pork that had rolled on the ground several times and was about to put it in her mouth. I held her wrist. It's dirty. You can't eat it. She whimpered and tried to break free from my hand. Be obedient. Eating dirty things will make your stomach hurt. There is still a lot in the pot if you want to eat. It's all for you. After hearing my words, she stopped struggling and calmed down. Nina followed me like a little tail. I took the reheated meal and put it in front of her. She picked up the chopsticks and devoured the rice in the bowl in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. Have you had enough? She touched her chubby stomach and nodded. Then let's go home. Your family should be worried about you. Nina's small face wrinkled into a ball. She shook her head like a rattle drum and tightly grasped the corner of the table with her hand. What? Are you relying on me now? I grabbed her collar and carried her out of the door. Just then, Aunt Zhao, who took care of her, came looking for her. As soon as I let go, she darted under my arm like a monkey and hid behind me, shivering. Looking back, she was crying pitifully and even hiccuped. Nina, be obedient. Auntie has made your favorite dishes. If you don't go back soon, they'll get cold, Aunt Zhao said as she tried to go around me to take her hand. Nina turned and ran, darting into my room and slamming the door with a bang. Even I was shut out. When Aunt Zhao saw this, she slapped the door loudly. Her eyebrows were not as kind as before and showed a bit of fierceness. Nina, you won't have forgotten what will happen if you are not obedient. Come out before Auntie gets angry. I frowned and stopped Aunt Zhao. Auntie, if she doesn't want to go back, let her stay here for one night. Aunt Zhao thought for a while and readily agreed. After she left, I knocked on the door. There was no movement. I sighed. Aunt Zhao has left. Open the door. The door opened a crack. A pair of moist eyes peeked out through the crack. Seeing that the person was really gone, she let me in. Nina sat on the ground, hugging her knees with her hands and burying her head in the crook of her arm. Are you afraid of Aunt Zhao? The person in front of her nodded slightly. I noticed that there was a flash of a red mark on her wrist. I held her wrist and pulled up her sleeve. There were purple pinch marks and scattered red marks intertwined. There wasn't even a piece of good skin on her arm. A burst of nameless anger rose inside me. She even hit you? Nina withdrew her hand, raised her head, looked at me and nodded again. Her eyes were red and swollen. Everyone said that Aunt Zhao was lucky to find a good job. Taking care of the eldest lady of the Jiang family brought her a monthly income of more than 100,000 yuan. Unexpectedly, she was so unscrupulous and hit a girl so hard. Seeing Nina gobbling up food today, it seemed like she hadn't had a good meal. I took out ointment and applied it to her hand. Are there any other injuries? She lifted her shirt hem. My face flushed and I pressed her hand and coughed twice. Apply it there yourself. I told her that if Aunt Zhao dared to hit her again when I wasn't around, she should smash expensive things and run to a crowded place. Later, I found a way to punish Aunt Zhao, and she finally calmed down. I began to have dreams about Nina. In the dream, she was surrounded by raging fire. The firelight reflected on her face. She stopped struggling and closed her eyes in despair. After waking up, I was filled with fear. The tears in her dream were so real and so hot. I comforted myself that it was just a dream. At mealtime, Nina came to knock on my door on time with a rice bowl. Due to my guidance, she was willing to speak. When I picked up food for her, she would say seriously, "Thank you, Brother Wesley." My room was gradually filled with many things for girls. It was no longer just black, white, and gray. As days passed, I dreamed the same dream more and more frequently. I stared absent-mindedly at the boiling water in the pot. The sound in the yard brought me back to my senses. I ran out of the door and saw Nina squatting on the ground, reaching for the fragments at her feet. Nina, are you okay? I carefully lifted her hand. You're bleeding. Let me deal with it for you. She raised her head and stared at me blankly. Wesley. After calling my name, she burst into tears. I thought she was in pain from her hand, but suddenly she threw herself into my arms. I had never seen such a sad look in her eyes. For a moment, my heart felt blocked and uncomfortable. She said she wanted to go to the Wang family's banquet, and I agreed. At night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed. The door was quietly pushed open. I quickly closed my eyes. From the weight of the footsteps, I could tell who it was. After a long time, she gently kissed my forehead. At that moment, I heard the sound of my heart beating close to my eardrum. I pretended I didn't know anything and teased Nina by holding her hand. She said she came back to close the door for me. I pretended to believe it. Along the way, I tried my best to suppress myself so as not to hold her in my arms. She always could easily stir my heart. After returning, I was awakened by a nightmare again. This time, the faces of Aunt Zhao and another strange man also appeared in the dream. That man pressed Nina under him and vented his animal desires. Blood kept gushing out of Nina's mouth. To cover up their crime, they burned Nina and the house to the ground in a fire. I rushed out of the door, but the sky quickly darkened strangely. When I pushed Nina and Aaron out of the door, I finally relaxed. I saved her. My Nina. Before the house collapsed, I told her the answer from afar, I like you too. I saw the CD she dropped. There was a note pasted on the back of the CD, with a few words written neatly, I like you. If you feel the same way as me, let's watch a movie together. I closed my eyes and let the fire engulf me. Sorry, I broke my promise. I have to stay in Min Village. 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 Have to stay